Hello, and welcome back to Storytime Banned Books Read with me. I'm Kathleen Francis, and I'm glad that you have joined me as we continue our read of James Baldwin's If Beale Street Could Talk. I remember the night the baby was conceived because it was the night of the day we finally found our loft. And this cat, whose name was Levy, really was going to rent it to us. He wasn't full of shit. He was an olive-skinned, curly-haired, merry-faced boy from the Bronx, about 33, maybe, with big, kind of electrical black eyes. And he dug us. He dug people who loved each other. The loft was off Canal Street, and it was big and in pretty good condition. It had two big windows on the street, and the two back windows opened onto a roof with a railing. There was a room for Fanny to work, and, with all the windows open, you wouldn't die of heat prostration in the summertime. We were very excited about the roof because you could have dinner on it, or serve drinks, or just sit there in the evenings if you wanted to, with your arms around each other. Hell, Levy said, drag out the blankets and sleep on it. He smiled at Fanny. Make babies on it. That's how I got here. What I most remember about him is that he didn't make either of us feel self-conscious. We all laughed together. You two should have some beautiful babies, he said, and take it from me, kids. The world damn sure needs them. He asked us for only 1 month in advance, and about a week later I took the money over to him. And then, when Fanny got into trouble, he did something very strange and, I think, very beautiful. He called me, and he said that I could have the money back any time I wanted it. But, he said, he wouldn't rent that loft to anybody but us. I can't, he said. The bastards. That loft stays empty until your man gets out of jail, and I ain't just whistling Dixie, honey. And he gave me his number, and he asked me please to let him know if there was anything at all he could do. I want you kids to have your babies. I'm funny that way. Levy explained and exhibited the somewhat complicated structure of locks and keys. Our loft was the top, up 3 or 4 stories. The stairs were steep. There was a set of keys for our loft, which had double locks. Then there was the door at the top of the steps, which locked us away from the rest of the building. Man, Fanny asked, what do we do in case of fire? Oh, said Levy, I forgot. And he unlocked the doors again, and we went back into the loft. He took us onto the roof and led us to the edge, where the railing was. On the far right of the roof, the railing opened, extending itself into a narrow catwalk. This railing led to the metal steps, by which steps one descended into the courtyard. Once in this courtyard, which seemed to be closed in by walls, one might wonder what on earth to do. It was something of a trap. Still, one would not have had to leap from the burning building. Once on the ground, one had to hope merely not to be buried beneath the flaming, crashing walls. Well, said Fanny, carefully holding me by one elbow and leading me back onto the roof, I can dig that. We again went through the ritual of the locking of the doors and descended into the street. Don't worry about the neighbors, Levy said, because after 5 or 6 o'clock, you won't have any. All you got between you and the street are small, failing sweatshops. And we got into the streets, and he showed us how to lock and unlock the street door. Got it? He asked Fanny. Got it, Fanny said. Come on, I'll buy you a milkshake. And we had 3 milkshakes on the corner, and Levy shook hands and left us, saying that he had to get home to his wife and kids, 2 boys, one age 2, one age 3.5. But before he left us, he said, Look, I told you not to worry about the neighbors, but watch out for the cops. They're murder. One of the most terrible, most mysterious things about a life is that a warning can be heeded only in retrospect. Too late. Levy left us, and Fanny and I walked hand in hand up the broad, bright, crowded streets toward the village, toward our pad. We talked and talked and laughed and laughed. We crossed Houston and started up 6th Avenue, Avenue of the Americas, with all those fucking flags on it, which we didn't see. I wanted to stop at one of the markets on Bleecker Street to buy some tomatoes. We crossed the Avenue of the Americas and started west on Bleecker. Fonny had one hand around my waist. We stopped at a vegetable stand. I started looking. Fonny hates shopping. He said, "Wait 1 minute. I'm going to buy some cigarettes." And he went up the street, just around the corner. I started picking out the tomatoes, and I remember that I was kind of humming to myself. I started looking around for a scale and for the man or the woman who would weigh the tomatoes for me and tell me what I owed. Fonny is right about me when he says I'm not very bright. When I first felt this hand on my behind, I thought it was Fonny. Then I realized that Fonny would never, never touch me that way in public. I turned, my 6 tomatoes in both hands, and found myself facing a small, young, greasy Italian punk. "I can sure dig a tomato who digs tomatoes," he said, and he licked his lips and smiled. 2 things happened in me, all at the same time. 3. This was a very crowded street. I knew that Fonny would be back at any moment. I wanted to smash my tomatoes in the boy's face, but no one had really noticed us yet, and I didn't want Fonny to get into a fight. I saw a white cop coming slowly up the street. I realized that I was black and that the crowded streets were white. And so I turned away and walked into the shop, still with my tomatoes in my hands. I found a scale, and I put the tomatoes on the scale, and I looked around for someone to weigh them, so that I could pay and get out of the store before Fonny came back from around the corner. The cop was now on the other side of the street, and the boy had followed me into the store. "Hey, sweet tomato, you know I dig tomatoes." And now people were watching us. I did not know what to do. The only thing to do was to get out of there before Fonny turned the corner. I tried to move, but the boy blocked my way. I looked around for someone to help me. People were staring, but no one moved. I decided in despair to call the cop, but when I moved, the boy grabbed my arm. He was really probably just a broken-down junkie. But when he grabbed my arm, I slapped his face and I spat in it. And exactly at that moment, Fonny entered the store. Fonny grabbed the boy by the hair, knocked him to the ground, picked him up and kicked him in the balls, and dragged him to the sidewalk and knocked him down again. I screamed and held on to Fonny with all my might, for I saw that the cop, who had been on the far corner, was now crossing the street, on the run, and the white boy lay bleeding and retching in the gutter. I was sure that the cop intended to kill Fonny, but he could not kill Fonny if I could keep my body between Fonny and this cop. And with all my strength, with all my love, my prayers, and armed with the knowledge that Fonny was not, after all, going to knock me to the ground, I held the back of my head against Fonny's chest, held both his wrists between my 2 hands, and looked up into the face of this cop. I said, "That man there attacked me, right in this store, right now. Everybody saw it." No one said a word. The cop looked at them all. Then he looked back at me. Then he looked at Fonny. I could not see Fonny's face, but I could see the cop's face, and I knew that I must not move, nor, if I could possibly help it, allow Fonny to move. "And where were you?" the cop elaborately asked Fonny. While all this, his eyes flicked over me in exactly the same way the boy's eyes had. While all this was going on between Junior there and, his eyes took me in again, and your girl. "He was around the corner," I said, "buying cigarettes," for I did not want Fonny to speak. I hoped that he would forgive me later. "Is that so, boy?" I said, "He's not a boy, officer." Now he looked at me, really looked at me for the first time, and therefore, for the first time, he really looked at Fonny. Meanwhile, some people had got Junior to his feet. "You live around here?" the cop asked Fonny. The back of my head was still on Fonny's chest, but he had released his wrists from my hands. "Yes," Fonny said, "on Bank Street," and he gave the officer the address. I knew that in a moment Fanny would push me away. "We're going to take you down, boy," the cop said, "for assault and battery." I did not know what would now have happened if the Italian lady who ran the store had not spoken up. "Oh, no," she said. "I know both these young people. They shop here very often. What the young lady has told you is the truth. I saw them both just now when they came, and I watched her choose her tomatoes, and her young man left her, and he said he would be right back. I was busy. I could not get to her right away. Her tomatoes are still on the scale. And that little good-for-nothing shit over there, he did attack her. And he has got exactly what he deserved. What would you do if a man attacked your wife? If you have one." The crowd snickered, and the cop flushed. "I saw exactly what happened. I am a witness, and I will swear to it." She and the cop stared at each other. "Funny way to run a business," he said, and licked his lower lip. "You will not tell me how to run my business," she said. "I was on the street before you got here, and I will be here when you are gone. Take," she said, gesturing toward the boy, now sitting on the curbstone, with some of his friends around him, "that miserable urchin away with you to Bellevue or to Rikers Island, or drop him in the river. He is of no earthly use to anyone. But do not try to frighten me. Basta!" I notice for the first time that Bell's eyes are blue, and that what I can see of his hair is red. He looks again at me, and then again at Fanny. He licks his lips again. The Italian lady re-enters the store and takes my tomatoes off the scale and puts them in a bag. "Well," says Belle, staring at Fanny, "be seeing you around." "You may," says Fanny, "but then again, you may not." "Not," says the Italian lady, coming back into the street, "if they or I see you first." She turns me around and puts the bag of tomatoes into my hands. She is standing between myself and Belle. She stares into my eyes. "You have a good man," she says. "Take him home, away from these diseased pigs." I look at her. She touches my face. "I have been in America a long time," she says. "I hope I do not die here." She goes back into her store. Fanny takes the tomatoes from me and holds the bag in the crook of one arm. The other arm he entwines through mine, interlocking his fingers through mine. We walk away slowly toward our pad. "Tish," says Fanny, very quietly, with a dreadful quietness. I almost know what he is going to say. "Yes, don't ever try to protect me again. Don't do that. I know I am saying the wrong thing, but you were trying to protect me." "It's not," he says, with the same terrifying quietness. "The same thing, Tish." And he suddenly takes the bag of tomatoes and smashes them against the nearest wall. Thank God the wall is blank. Thank God it is now beginning to be dark. Thank God tomatoes spatter but do not ring. I know what he is saying. I know he is right. I know I must not say anything. Thank God he does not let go my hand. I look down at the sidewalk, which I cannot see. I hope he cannot hear my tears. But he does. He stops and turns me to him, and he kisses me. He pulls away and looks at me and kisses me again. "Don't think I don't know you love me. You believe we are going to make it." Then I am calm. There are tears on his face. His or mine, I don't know. I kiss him where our tears fall. I start to say something. He puts one finger on my lips. He smiles his little smile. "Hush, don't say a word. I'm going to take you out to dinner. At our Spanish place, you remember? Only this time it's got to be on credit." And he smiles, and I smile, and we keep on walking. "We have no money," Fanny says to Pedrocito, when we enter the restaurant, but we are very hungry, and I will have some money in a couple of days. In a couple of days, says Pedrocito furiously. That is what they all say, and furthermore, striking an incredulous hand to his forehead, I suppose that you would like to be sitting down. Why, yes, says Fawny, grinning. If you could arrange it, that would be nice. At a table, no doubt. And he stares at Fawny as though he simply cannot believe his eyes. Well, I would, yeah, like a table. But good evening, senorito. Pedrocito now says and smiles at me. It is for her I do it, you know, he informs Fawny. It is clear that you do not feed her properly. He leads us to a table and sits us down. And now, no doubt, he scowls. You would like 2 margaritas? Caught me again, says Fawny, and he and Pedrocito laugh, and Pedrocito disappears. Fawny takes my hand in his. Hello, he says. I say, hello. I don't want you to feel bad about what I said to you before. You a fine, tough chick, and I know, hadn't been for you, my brains might be splattered all over that precinct basement by now. He pauses, and he lights a cigarette. I watch him. So, I don't mean that you did nothing wrong. I guess you did the only thing you could have done, but you got to understand where I'm coming from. He takes my hands between his again. We live in a nation of pigs and murderers. I'm scared every time you out of my sight. And maybe what happened just now was my fault, because I should have never left you alone at that vegetable stand. But I was just so happy, you know, about the loft. I wasn't even thinking. Funny, I've been to that vegetable stand 100 times, and nothing like that has ever happened before. I've got to take care of you, of us. You can't go everywhere I go. How is it your fault? That was just some broken down junkie, some broken down white American, Fawny says. Well, it's still not your fault. He smiles at me. They got us in a trick bag, baby. It's hard, but I just want for you to bear in mind that they can make us lose each other by putting me in the shit, or they can try to make us lose each other by making you try to protect me from it. You see what I mean? Yes, I say, finally. I see what you mean, and I know that that's true. Pedrocito returns with our margaritas. We have a specialty tonight, he announces, very, very Spanish, and we are trying it out on all those customers who think Franco is a great man. He looks at Fawny quizzically. I suppose that you do not exactly qualify, so for you I will remove the arsenic. Without the arsenic, it is a little less strong, but it is actually very good, and I think you will like it. Do you trust me not to poison you? Anyway, it would be very foolish of me to poison you before you pay your tremendous bill. We would immediately go bankrupt. He turns to me. Will you trust me, senorita? I assure you that we will prepare it with love. Now watch it, Pete, says Fawny. Oh, your mind is like a sewer. You do not deserve so beautiful a girl. And he disappears again. That cop, Fawny says. That cop. What about that cop? But I am suddenly, and I don't know why, as still and as dry as a stone with fear. He's going to try to get me, Fawny says. How? You didn't do anything wrong. The Italian lady said so, and she said that she would swear to it. And that's why he's going to try to get me, Fawny says. White men don't like it at all when a white lady tells them, you a boat full of motherfuckers and the black cat was right, and you can kiss my ass. He grins, because that's what she told him in front of a whole lot of people, and he couldn't do shit, and he ain't about to forget it. Well, I say, we'll soon be moving downtown to our loft. That's right, he says, and smiles again. Pedrocito arrives with our specialties. When two people love each other, when they really love each other, everything that happens between them has something of a sacramental air. They can sometimes seem to be driven very far from each other. I know of no greater torment, no more resounding void, when your lover has gone. But tonight, with our vows so mysteriously menaced, and with both of us, though from different angles, placed before this fact, we were more profoundly together than we had ever been before. Take care of each other, Joseph had said. You're going to find out it's more than a notion. After dinner and coffee, Pedrocito offered us brandy, and then he left us in the nearly empty restaurant. Fanny and I just sat there and sipped our brandy, talking a little, holding hands, digging each other. We finished our brandy. Fanny said, "Shall we go?" "Yes," I said, for I wanted to be alone with him, in his arms. He signed the check, the last check he was ever to sign there. I have never been allowed to pay it. It has been, they say, misplaced. We said good night, and we walked home with our arms around each other. There was a patrol car parked across the street from our house, and as Fanny opened our gate and unlocked our door, it drove off. Fanny smiled but said nothing. I said nothing. The baby was conceived that night. I know it. I know it from the way Fanny touched me, held me, entered me. I had never been so open before, and when he started to pull out, I would not let him. I held on to him as tightly as I could, crying and moaning and shaking with him, and felt life, his life, inundating me, entrusting itself to me. Then we were still. We did not move, because we could not. We held each other so close that we might indeed have been one body. Fanny caressed me and called my name, and he fell asleep. I was very proud. I had crossed my river. Now we were one. Thank you for joining me.